I need to get this off my chest. I recently saw through a YouTube recommendation the trailer for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and it brought back memories that used to bring me joy. Now it just brings me pain. My older brother liked to hack our Wii. Just for the sake of privacy, I'm going to change the names so no one goes looking for me or any of my family members involved. I will call my brother Harlan and refer to myself as Lyle. Harlan would spend hours of his time doing texture hacks, including adding games through emulators. Dolphin was a big one for him. I remember Homebrew the most personally. I wasn't huge into the hacking scene, and it's been over a decade since I've seen that old Wii. He hacked the hell out of Super Smash Bros. Brawl. There was this one texture hack he did as a prank to scare me, where all the characters' moveset were swapped. Pikachu having Ganondorf's moveset unsettled me the most. In hindsight, it's funny to me now. But back then, I cried and turned off the Wii while my brother laughed. Yeah, he was kind of an asshole. However, what he did back then was nothing in comparison to what he would do later. Soon, he got really good at modding and getting past limitations. Our Super Smash Bros. Brawl game started to look completely different, with custom music, textures, and even characters. I was so impressed that I asked Harlan how he managed to do it from scratch. He said he didn't make an entirely new roster. He tried to explain it to me, something about copying a fighter's files and assigning them to a new slot or a replacement slot. Essentially, by cloning the fighter, the game still thinks it's loading that fighter's data just from a different location or ID. What he would do is keep the animations from the original fighter, reuse or modify the movesets, and change how the character looked and sounded. He turned Lucas into Claus using this method. If I remember right, he turned Peach into Daisy too. Harlan hacked our Wii games and played with me for years, until one day, he just stopped. It started with us being too busy with school to really hang out with each other, but even during the summer, he would spend most of his time in his room. When he got hired part-time at a coffee shop, I barely saw him at all. He would just study, work, then go to bed. Rinse and repeat. He rarely smiled, didn't talk much, and became withdrawn. He never said hello to me or mom like he used to. He seemed more irritated and always had this look. I don't quite know how to describe it. You know how you can look into someone's eyes and just know something is wrong? It's that gut feeling everyone talks about but hardly listens to most of the time. I'm not a psychologist, so I won't pretend to be one by diagnosing him based on assumptions. I can only tell what I saw, since he wouldn't speak up. Regardless, he must have been struggling. He had to have been, to isolate himself so much in his spare time. To me, it seemed like he was fighting depression. I can't blame him given our home life. He ate very little, didn't sleep well most nights, and would give up new hobbies as soon as he started them. Our mother didn't make it any better. She would tell my brother to suck it up and get to school or work. She was one of those mothers who didn't believe in talking about feelings or letting emotions guide you. God, the more I think about it, the more I wish I could have talked to him. We were raised to never talk about our problems and to handle everything ourselves. Knowing now how unhealthy that was, I have so many regrets about how I handled Harlan's attitude. I gave him hell every single day for ignoring me Honestly, I thought he hated my existence. Looking back, I would have hated my own existence too. Harlan may have been an asshole, but I feel like I was the bigger one during that time. We were both going through the typical shit. Growing up, going to high school, finding a social life, and trying to make our idea of life come true. Life showed us quickly that it doesn't work that way. He wanted to be a game programmer, while I wanted to be a writer. Yeah, Mom didn't approve, but she picked on Harlan the most for the career he's chosen. All I did was make his life worse, telling him he was an idiot, throwing pencils at him, yelling at him. I did some crazy shit to him. I could say what happened to him was unpredictable, that none of us saw it coming, but that would be a lie. The stress from home, work, and school finally got to him one day, and I caught him smoking weed in a parking lot near a game store. Usually, like the brat I was, I would have ratted him out. But when I saw him that day, the expression he gave me was enough to stop me. He didn't threaten me or get angry. He just looked broken. He stared at me and I knew Harlan was not there. I wondered if he could even see me. "Well, are you going to tell on me?" he asked. "Going to make my life harder, Lyle?" Damn, his voice was so wrong. To this day, the tone of his voice gives me goosebumps. He was beaten in ways I didn't understand yet. I was still a kid, going through my first year of high school when all of this went down. He was almost through with it, barely making good grades. Summer was coming. Graduation was just around the corner. Finals were drawing near. He needed a moment to breathe, and I had interrupted that. I ended up joining him later that night while our mom was asleep. We snuck out, drove to that same parking lot, and smoked under the streetlights. He didn't talk to me much, while I rambled on about things I don't even remember now. It must have been the weed, because I felt strangely calm when Harlan finally opened up about how he had failed at life. There was this girl he had been seeing, someone he'd been in love with for a long time, who broke up with him 2 days earlier. To keep her identity safe, let's call her Judy. Judy worked at the same coffee shop and was in the same class as Harlan. So it wasn't surprising they got together. I didn't think she would break up with him, and he wouldn't tell me why. Mom had made it clear that he was a disappointment for going into game development instead of becoming a businessman. His grades were dropping no matter how hard he tried. I expected him to cry, but he didn't. He was just gone. Gone might be the wrong word since he was right there. He was talking to me, yet the numb expression on his face, the dullness in his voice, and the way he slumped in his car seat, it all made me feel like I was talking to a corpse. Then he went quiet, staring out of the window with a shrug. Even though he seemed so far gone, I tried to reach whatever part of my brother might have been still there. Even though he seemed so far gone, I tried to reach whatever part of my brother might have still been there. I brought up fun memories, how we used to play all kinds of video games, and the only responses I got were a small smile and an occasional, "Yep." Finally, Finally, I asked him if he still remembered our Wii and the hacks he used to do. For the first time in a long time, he laughed. I hadn't heard him laugh in years. Damn, I remember that, he snorted. I thought about revisiting that Wii one more time before graduation. I take this as a sign I should. Thanks for reminding me. I couldn't believe my ears. Wait, seriously? You want to go through our Wii again? Yeah, he said, smiling. There's one more hack I want to do before I'm officially kicked out of the house. When it's done, I'll let you know. Until then, don't snoop. Why? I asked. I've never gone through your shit before. I didn't notice it at the time, but the way Harlan smiled at me could have churned milk. It was unsettling, like a joke I wasn't a part of. Not yet, anyway. He simply said, "It would be a mistake." There's not much to say after that. We went home, our mom didn't notice, and the weekend passed like normal. For 3 weeks, Harlan stayed at his computer and the Wii whenever he got the chance. I swear he barely slept. I woke up one night at 2 a.m. and walked past his bedroom door. His light was still on, and there was a faint tapping from the computer. Even Mom, who didn't get worried about anything, seemed concerned about Harlan. I saw her stop at his door, raising a fist to knock, then lowering it, leaving him alone to work on one last hack. When the day of graduation came, Harlan seemed disappointed. I asked him why, and he told me he wouldn't be able to finish the hack in time. He couldn't even get that right. I patted him on the back, saying it was worth a shot and that he did his best. He gave me a forced grin, clearly upset but was trying to keep the peace. A week later was when all the signs I should have seen surfaced into a horrible nightmare. It all happened so quickly. I thought I was dreaming. I thought it might have been my brain's way of coping with the tragedy. Hell, I don't even know. It started with a knock at the door in the middle of the night. I woke up hearing my mom talking to someone. Then I heard the most blood-curdling scream I have ever heard come out of her. I ran out of my room to see a police officer in the living room and my mother crying at his feet. It's a bit fuzzy, but I recall holding her as she shook and accused the officer of lying. I was in too much shock to do anything else. Harlan was found dead in another person's home, the very same home of his ex-girlfriend Judy. Judy was also found deceased in her bed. Her parents were out at the time and came home to the site. It turns out, Harlan got drunk that night and broke into Judy's house and killed her. Then he hung himself in her backyard. My mother and I didn't learn this until later, after Judy's funeral, but she was found in her bed with knife wounds to her chest. Her face was unrecognizable, which is why she had a closed casket. Needless to say, I was utterly destroyed. How could Harlan do something so vile and heinous? What the hell was going through his mind when he decided to throw his whole life away and impact the lives of others beyond repair? I was angry when Mom had to confirm that the body in the morgue was her eldest son. I was angry when I had to speak about him at his funeral, and I was angry when I looked at his tombstone. Mom had to drag me away when I started cursing at the ground he was buried under, asking him why in God's name he did what he did, over and over again. Several weeks passed, and Mom decided it was time to go through her deceased son's room. An hour passed, and I heard her crying, so I went in to investigate. It was an experience I will never forget. Everything was mostly untouched, frozen in time due to a life wasted. Mom was on the edge of the bed, holding Harlan's favorite hoodie to her chest as she rocked herself to soothe her grief. Clothes were scattered on the floor, a computer still in sleep mode, a bed with sheets halfway off, and a Wii sitting at the base of the television. The TV was turned off, but I noticed the Wii was still on. Its green glow caught my attention. A thought crossed my mind. How far had Harlan gone with his last hack? I was pulled out of my thoughts when I heard my mother say my name. I comforted her as best I could. This might sound selfish, but I wish she had been able to comfort me. While I was there when she cried, no one came to me at night when I wailed for my lost brother. No one came to me when I asked God why Harlan killed Judy. No one answered me when I blamed God and everyone else for the tragedy. That cold-blooded bastard didn't have to do it. I wanted to understand why my brother killed Judy and what made him snap that night. Mom couldn't finish going through Harlan's things. I don't think she even got started. So when I was left alone on Harlan's bed, I closed the bedroom door and reflected on our last interaction. My gaze settled on the Wii's power button, and my stomach twisted in anticipation. I must have been desperate for answers or anything that could give me closure, because I wanted to know what was in Harlan's last hack. I hadn't picked up a Wii remote in years at that point, so when I held it in my hand, all the memories I had of Harlan before he became a twisted human being flooded back like poisoned water. My heart ached, longing to turn back time and undo the choices we made and the horrible things we said. With a deep breath, I looked for the TV remote. Much to my frustration, I couldn't find it anywhere, so I pressed the power button on the television itself. There was a brief flash of light, the TV logo appearing, and then the AV input screen flickered in the top left corner against a black background. Then I saw it. It was a victory screen from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but I was not prepared for what was standing there. Hands clasped at her chest, looking upward, was Princess Peach dressed in purple. But there were scarlet stains all along her torso and hands. Her face was covered in blood, and one eye was completely gone. Her hair was dark brown, and there was no crown on her head. I stared at her for a long time, nearly breathless. Judy loved the color purple, and her hair was brown. This couldn't have been a coincidence. What the hell were you thinking? I mumbled. I noticed the other character beside Princess Peach. It was a dark silhouette with no features, clapping its hands. I could faintly see something clipping in and out of its hands sporadically. It was too small to make out clearly. I listened closely and realized there was sound. It was just at a very low volume. I went over to the TV and turned it up. The background was a series of whimpering murmurs and overlapping whispers. They were unintelligible, and feeling deeply disturbed, I turned the volume all the way down, just so I wouldn't have to hear it anymore. Though I was horrified, I was also angry. Had Harlan planned the murder this whole time, and then decided to brag about it through a Mario game of all places? Pathetic! I pressed the A button, wanting to know exactly what my brother had done. On the screen appeared a message. "You've gotten all the trophies. Congratulations, and thank you." Overlapping the text was another line I could barely make out. "This is my final message. I warned you, Lyle." I didn't know what to think. This was confusing. What did Harlan mean by that? And what were the chances of getting all the trophies now of all times? Did he play the game and manage to collect the last trophy just so he could leave this message for me? How much had Harlan planned? No, there was no way he could have been this desperate. It seemed so far-fetched, and yet I couldn't get the hours he spent alone in his room out of my head. He was working on this hack. He had to have played it before he killed Judy. He knew what I would do. He left this for me, or our mom to find. How sick. I went back to the title screen and, to my shock, it actually looked normal. I couldn't tell if the normal music was playing, but the menu appeared untouched. I hovered over classic mode and went to the character select screen. All the characters looked normal except for two, Ganondorf and Peach. On the roster, they were both just dark silhouettes. I assumed these were the only two characters he had hacked. I hovered over Ganondorf and selected him. I looked at the icon, and the name at the bottom wasn't Ganondorf. It was Fighter_Null. An odd name, I thought. Obviously, it must have been a placeholder for whatever Harlan had planned. There was one thing I wasn't prepared for when I selected Fighter_Null. You remember how the Wii remote had a speaker? Once Fighter_Null was selected, I heard a voice come through it. "Hey." I froze. It was Harlan's voice. I paused the game and took out the batteries. I didn't want to hear it again. I stormed into Harlan's closet to grab a GameCube controller instead. I connected it to the Wii and continued. For CPU, I selected something at random. I was taken to the stage screen, and again, everything looked normal. I selected the battlefield stage and waited. It took a minute, but what loaded was Battlefield with a dark red background. Fighter_Null dropped onto the stage, and it was the shadow figure I had seen earlier beside Peach. On its side, however, hovered a model of a knife. Fighter_Null didn't have a belt or anything to hold it, so it looked awkwardly clipped to the character model. The CPU character selected for this fight was Lucas, who appeared to have been hacked as well, wearing a constant expression of fear. I moved Fighter_Null toward Lucas and quickly realized the character had all of Ganondorf's moves. Go figure, a typical character texture hack. When I used Flame Choke on Lucas, the flames were a dark red. I also noticed Fighter_Null held Lucas for a few seconds longer than usual before slamming him to the ground. I used a down special move, Wizard's Foot, to kick Lucas across the stage. The kick made the game lag, as if it were struggling to load something. Lucas staggered backward from the impact, but something about the movement didn't feel right. It was as if the game couldn't decide where his body was supposed to be. His model jittered in place, snapping between frames that didn't connect. Half a step forward, then suddenly halfway across the stage, then back again. The textures on his face began to tear apart first. His fearful expression stopped animating properly, locking into something hollow and wrong, like the game had forgotten how to render emotion. His eyes didn't just disappear. They seemed to fail to load, flickering in and out as empty black sockets. Then his body started breaking apart at the seams. His arms stretched slightly too far before snapping back into place, joints bending in ways they weren't meant to. Small fragments of his model flickered away for a second, as if the game was deleting and redrawing him over and over again in the same place. The stage itself began to stutter. The red tint of Battlefield pulsed like a heartbeat, brightening and dimming in uneven intervals. The music warped into a broken loop. Half a note, silence, then the same fragment again, stretched and distorted. Lucas's mouth hung open, but even that stopped updating correctly. It stayed open too long, too wide, until his entire head jerked slightly to the side and froze mid-motion. For a moment, everything held still. Then the entire screen lagged completely. Not a normal freeze. It was as if the game was still running somewhere beneath the surface, trying desperately to continue, but unable to push the image forward. Lucas remained on screen, locked in a broken pose, while tiny flickers of movement rippled through him like static, trying to become a body again. And then nothing. Just him, stuck mid-break, as if the game had stopped before deciding what he was supposed to become. The game had frozen, and I had to restart it. When I went back to the menu, I had a sudden thought. What if I played as Princess Peach this time and fought fighter_null? Surely Harlan had hidden something there. All of this was too deliberate for him not to. I chose the one stage he had always loved, Bridge of Eldin. I waited patiently as the game loaded. The background was a starry night that glitched between black and blue. Princess Peach appeared, her purple dress now stained with blood, and fighter_null appeared, nearly hidden in the darkness of the stage. I moved closer, my leg resting on the mangled sheets of Harlan's bed. It was hard to see fighter_null, but I managed to land several hits. Peach's moveset was the same, except her umbrella was now also stained with blood. The bridge functioned normally at first, and I was beating fighter_null until the barrel rolled into view. When the bridge exploded, the game lagged violently. The screen didn't just freeze. It seemed to tear, as if the image itself was being pulled apart in uneven strips. In the middle of the glitches, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The faint outline of a face forming inside the distortion. It wasn't fully rendered. More like the game was trying and failing to load a human expression behind the stage geometry. The longer I stared, the more it felt like it was staring back. The stage was alternating between two states, the glitching night sky and a single static image. Harlan and Judy. Each time the frame flickered, the transition wasn't smooth. It snapped, like a corrupted slideshow trying to correct itself. One moment the stars were visible, warped and trembling in the black-blue sky. The next, the entire background was replaced by that photograph. Harlan holding Judy tightly, smiling directly at the camera. Judy wasn't looking at him. She was turned slightly away, her expression unreadable, almost uncomfortable, as if she had been caught mid-movement and forced to stay still. But even that image wasn't stable. It degraded every time it appeared, colors bleeding at the edges, Harlan's grin stretching slightly too wide, Judy's outline flickering as if she wasn't fully part of the frame. For a split second, parts of the image failed to load entirely, leaving blank black patches where their bodies should have been. It lasted only a few seconds before the stage locked up completely. The audio cut to a low, unstable hum, like the game was holding its breath. I waited, frozen, staring at the broken loop of images. Then everything snapped back into motion. The lag vanished as quickly as it had come, and the match resumed like nothing had happened. Fighter_null took advantage immediately and knocked me off the stage. We were both down to 1 life. And it happened again. The game stuttered, and the corrupted image returned, Harlan and Judy flickering in and out of the battlefield like an overwritten memory trying to force itself through the game's code. My input stopped registering properly. Peach wouldn't respond the way she should have. I fell from the bridge before I could recover, the screen tearing slightly as she dropped out of view. My leg knocked against something in the sheets, and I suddenly heard the game at full volume. Game! I fumbled for the remote. I couldn't have found it at a worse time. At max volume, the victory screen for Fighter_null appeared, and what I saw made my adrenaline spike and my jaw drop in pure horror. Fighter_null posed like Ganondorf, raising a knife high in his fist. Replacing Ganondorf's voice was Harlan's voice, booming through the speakers. This could be you. Beside him, instead of Peach clapping, she was lying on the ground, dead. Her model glitched, twitching unnaturally. Occasionally, it would snap upright, clapping with a contorted body before collapsing again. Fighter_null also flickered, shifting from its victory pose to suddenly standing inches from the screen, its outline of a mouth moving silently. The background was no longer silent like a normal victory screen. Harlan's voice returned, distorted like a broken radio signal. By the time you see this, the deed has already been done. If you expect me to say I'm sorry, forget it. This was a long time coming. I will see you all in hell. Then the unintelligible whispering I had heard before blared through the speakers. I couldn't take it anymore. I pressed pause, and returned to the Wii menu. I grabbed the TV remote from under the sheet and muted the damn thing. I sat there crying. I wanted closure, to get inside my brother's head, only to find more questions than answers. If there was any answer at all, it was that Harlan had no remorse. He was proud of this. He wanted to kill Judy, and he wanted to deliver this unapologetic, sick, final message through a video game. I think he wanted it this way to destroy whatever sympathy I had left for him. To take something we both enjoyed and ruin it for the rest of my life. I could no longer look back on my childhood memories playing this with him without seeing Judy's dead body over them. My memories are forever scarred because of Harlan. I don't think I could ever forgive him for what he did. I cannot forgive my mother for raising us to keep silent about our problems. I could sit here and say, if my brother got help, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Probably. Sure. If I hadn't pushed him the way I did with my own attitude, maybe he wouldn't have snapped. I could sit here and say, what if for years to come? It's been 5 years since the incident, and I still have those questions, those maybes and those what ifs every single day of my life. But it doesn't change anything. Harlan was a murderer who died and brought his own piece of hell to his little brother after death. The best theory I could come up with for Fighter_Null is that the character was supposed to be Harlan, and Princess Peach was Judy. He hadn't finished the character model, nor any of the other sick details he might have planned to add into the game. All the glitches were the result of the hack being unfinished. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that Harlan had ironically portrayed himself in the most perfect way possible. I didn't even recognize him in the days leading up to Judy's death. My mother came in and saw me crying. She didn't comfort me with an embrace or even a word. She just stood there, looking on with distress etched into her face. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to tell her what I had witnessed anyway, for whatever little closure I could get. I buried the CD card as a symbol for moving on. I also wiped the Wii clean and sold it for an easy $100. I took one last look at the disc before I snapped it and threw it away. There was one final message my brother left for me, as if he were still smiling from the pits of hell. Finding this was your mistake.